Channel. I'm your host and untitled anarchist seagull called Elise. Hello, Jinjiri, Adam. How are ya? So, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about. I imagine, chat, that you've heard a little bit about the Palestine conference that was supposed to happen in Berlin, and then almost happened, and then was broken up by the cops. Yeah, it is absolutely, even by German standards, it is actually kind of hard to come up with an example of this level of heavy-handed shit. So, and I mean, I had just been reading an article in Junge Welt about it, and then I was trying to find the Junge Welt article because so that I could make sure that I got my facts straight. And I found the official statement of the Anwältinnenkollektiv Berlin, the Berlin Lawyers Collective, which handled the legal defense for the conference. And it's even fucking worse than what was in Junge Welt, actually. So, okay, there was a plan to have this conference, a Palestine conference, under the heading Wir klagen an. We accuse, we indict. And it was to be about the fact Germany's complicity in the genocide in Gaza, against the background of the litigation that has been brought in the International Court of Justice by Nicaragua for Germany's complicity. So, in the weeks before this thing was planned, there was all sorts of harassment and incitement, and just it was massively smeared in the media. Politicians were all over it, just basically calling for the cops to just go in and bust heads, basically, and try to ban the thing outright. Now, see, the thing is, and this is one of the interesting things that was in this statement from the Lawyers Collective. Yeah, okay, if they had actually gone and banned it in advance, then it would have been possible to get an injunction. Instead, what they did is they gave absolutely no indication that they were going to ban it. Like, I mean, the lawyers for the event organizers, were in constant contact, liaising with the cops, and nobody said anything about that. In fact, they'd gotten, since under German law, non-nationals their political activities in Germany can be banned under certain circumstances. The lawyers for the event organizers had already went to court and gotten an order that it was that did not mean that it would be illegal for Salman Abu Sitta, the Palestinian cartographer and Nakba survivor and multiple author, to give a welcome address to the conference if he did it from outside of the country, because the entire point of these bans on political activity is they're bans on political activity within the country. And so it isn't illegal for somebody to connect via live stream to talk to people who are in the country. They'd had a court order on this. The cops were made aware of this. The prosecution also, the DPP, had a representative on site. They were made aware of this. Everybody was made aware of this. And so what the cops did, this is wild. I've never heard of this happening in Germany, is they declared this conference to be a demonstration. Just arbitrarily, based on nothing. They said, okay, we're going to call it a demonstration. They could, by calling it a demonstration, even though it was not one, it was a conference indoors, not on public streets, they had the legal authority to impose all sorts of conditions on it. They used that to limit the number of participants, which they did, claiming that there weren't enough fire exits. But then they found, turned around and said, on top of the limited number of participants, they were going to force forced the conference to make space for 40 representatives of unaccredited media organizations, which they're not. I mean, that's not how that works. That's the whole point of accreditation for an event is that it gives you the reason that's a thing is that organizers are allowed to decide what media, if any, they want to invite in. They have what is in German law called the Hausrecht, literally house right, i.e., they can decide who's allowed in and who is not. But the cops decided to force them to accept 40 members of media organizations that had been involved in smearing. I mean, including state media who had been involved in smearing the event and its organizers. Now, so then they had clarified a bunch of other things, and they said, okay, now you can carry out the event. And so they have the recorded message from Salman Abu Sitta, the cartographer, which, again, a court had already ruled they were allowed to broadcast. And that was used by the cops as a justification for turning off the electricity and breaking up the entire fucking conference. Even though, as the Lawyers Collective points out, nobody not the DPP's representative, not the cops, could point to a single illegal thing that anyone had done. Because the standard in a situation like this is that you can't, that the only time that the cops would have the right to break up an indoor meeting like this, hola, no hay aguara, ¿cómo está? The only way that they would have the right to do that is if, like, serious offenses had been committed. Offenses that the DPP would be able to prosecute on their own initiative without, somebody filing a complaint. So they, not only this, okay, another Abu Sitta, I don't know if he's related to Salman, but Ghassan Abu Sitta, the surgeon and rector of the University of Glasgow, he was going to be flying in to talk, amongst other things, about the time he recently spent in Gaza at Al-Shifa Hospital and I think at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital during the genocide. He gets to the airport. The cops then tell him he's not allowed into the country. Not only they detain him for hours in the terminal, refuse to give him his passport back, and then they tell him he's facing jail time if he tries to give his talk to the conference via, like, a live stream from outside of the country. On what legal basis that's supposed to be the case, nobody fucking knows. I mean, they just threatened, they just did this. And one of the other speakers, since this was organized by the DM25 party, an EU Parliament party, Yanis Varoufakis, the former finance minister of Greece, who is a member of that party, one of the leaders of the party, was going to be speaking. And despite him being an EU citizen, who the German authorities can do much less to under German immigration law, they also issued a ban on him in giving any kind of speeches in the country. Like, I mean, the level of this shit, this is like the kind of bullshit that you hear about, like, Pinochet carrying out in, like, the 1980s when somebody too respectable to outright ban the whole thing, like an international human rights organization giving a conference. This is the level of bullshit that they would pull in order to break that thing up. Yeah, the other Ghassan. We've got two Abu Sittas, two Ghassans. The balance is maintained, the name balance. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is just absolutely fucking wild. And the Union of German Journalists celebrated this as a victory for press freedom. That they were allowed to act essentially as agents of the police to further limit the already severely limited number of participants the fucking conference was going to be allowed to have by going someplace where they were not welcome, who, having been like forcibly allowed into a venue that supposedly was already overcrowded. And the justification, remember, was fire exits. They had to protect, they needed to protect fire exits and shit. So they had to limit the, I mean, this is, I've all sorts of shit. I've heard of all sorts of shit going down in Germany, particularly around Palestinian things. But this is next level. And the thing is, they clearly understood from the start that if they actually were to ban it in advance, they would probably end up losing in court. Because the thing is, out of all of the elements of the German regime, the one place where Palestinian solidarity activists tend to do relatively well is the courts. Like, there's a very good record of winning, and the Lawyers Collective are quite correct. They would have every reason to expect that they would win, an injunction if there had been a ban in advance. But instead, by doing this bullshit, by like arbitrarily declaring it a demonstration and then breaking it up based on nothing, based on no fucking evidence, no legal standard was met, they made it impossible to get any kind of injunction because the whole thing, was over before it even properly started. Only one person was able to give a speech, actually to finish her speech, and then all hell broke loose. And the cops went and like violently arrested a bunch of Jewish activists, leading to shouts from the participants of "Never Again" and "Unser Städtel brennt," appropriately. I mean, the Berlin cops, it's worth noting. Okay, there's a district of Berlin called Neukölln, which, amongst other things, has a lot of, there's a fairly large, like, immigrant and fairly large Muslim population there. And Nazis have a habit of carrying out attacks there. In fact, everybody knows which Nazis are doing it. They're notorious. Everybody knows their names. And the cops, every time somebody says, like, why don't you do something about this, the jacks say, we don't have enough staffing levels. Guess how many, chat, just guess how many cops were made available to go to the Palestine Congress, the Palestine Conference. How many cops got sent there? Just fucking guess. Well, you got the right number of digits in Guadalajara. 900. 900, weón. 900. 900 fucking cops. Like, they... I mean, it's absolutely, it is unbelievable. And this is like, I haven't even gotten into how they, like, found a way to get the Jewish Voice for a Just Peace in the Middle East's bank account shut down run up to this thing, because the Jewish, this Jewish organization was raising funds for the conference. And so they got their account frozen. Like, which is the second time since World War II that a Jewish organization's bank accounts have been shut down. And both times were this one organization. Yeah, I mean, it's Nazi shit. I mean, this is seriously uh, again, even by the standards, the normal German standards of the kind of bullshit that they pull on anything to do with Palestine, this is next level. I have not heard of them arbitrarily calling an indoor conference a demonstration. The thing, what you have to keep in mind here is under the German Constitution. And this is not an unusual thing in constitutional law internationally. There is a difference between an open air assembly and an indoor one. There is a fundamental difference. Because the Constitution allows the state to impose all kinds of terms and conditions on outdoor, open air assemblies, but not an indoor meeting. There is going. I mean, one thing we can be fairly sure about. Well, two things. A, Germany's not looking like beating that accessory to genocide rap anytime soon. And B, this is going to be the courts are going to be spending a lot of time untangling this bullshit, and probably, I mean, it seems extremely unlikely that the German cops and the politicians who incited this are going to come away from it unscathed. Because again, I mean, Palestinian solidarity organizations actually do quite well in the courts there. It's like the one place, the one branch of government where they actually have to be heard out, and being heard out, they win.